Welcome to our workshop today, Building Blocks. My name is Adrian Molina, and today I'm joined by two amazing men of God. This is Pastor Jabin Chavez, Senior Pastor of City Light Church in Las Vegas, Nevada. Come on, put your hands together for Pastor Jabin. And this is Pastor Stephen Chandler, Pastor of Union Church in Columbia, Maryland. Come on, put your hands together for them. And we're pumped to be here with you. In a moment, you'll get to hear from these two leaders. But really, before we get into our content today, we've been talking about it since this morning. VOUSCon 2024, we have officially released that, and excited for us to be back at the University of Miami. So if you want to get registered for it, it's the cheapest that it's ever going to be. It's $99 right now. So you could go to VOUSCon.com. But also, any pastors in the room? Maybe raise your hand if you're a pastor in the room. Okay, awesome. So for pastors specifically, we're hosting an event in January called the Pastors Assembly, and that's going to be January 29th and the 30th. So that's a Monday and Tuesday. If you go to VOUSCon.com/pastors, you'll be able to sign into that and get registered for it. But today specifically, guys, I'm pumped for this conversation. We're talking about building teams, finding the right team, and I think what's important to know is that both of you are obviously a gift to the Capital C Church. You're a gift to the body of Christ as communicators, as preachers of the word, as storytellers of the gospel. But also, you two are building a church. You two are in a managerial role, a pastoring role. So today, a lot of the conversation really is about how do we build team. How do we identify the right people? How do we retain the right people? And then how do we, if we need to, release people? So maybe we'll kick it off as we're thinking about ourselves in our role as senior pastors, as you all as senior pastors. Myself, I'm the executive pastor at VOUS, so I'm involved in the hiring process, in the development process of our staff. As we're thinking about that, I'd love to hear from you, Pastor Jabin. What are you looking for in an individual that's going to join your team? Before you're looking at a resume, before you're looking at skill sets, you're trying to identify people that are a part of your community. What are the things that you have found to be non-negotiables for you in order to join your team?
Yeah, what I found is that they have to understand just that word team, and that they're not going to be a silo unto themselves just building their thing. They are going to have to be able to work within the entire ministry. And what I've also learned is that anyone who's on our team that's ever played team sports gets it a lot quicker. People who don't, it's a lot harder. And so understanding that you are a part of an organization. So if you think about like a plaza, with a lot of different businesses, it's all under the same roof, but they're all in competition. And that's how a lot of people see their ministry within a church. But you got to see it like a department store, like a Nordstrom, where they're all on the same team, all building towards the same thing. And so that to me is the most important thing, that if you're gonna have a real individualistic kind of idea and kind of Lone Ranger thing, it's not going to work. Because in ministry, everything bleeds. Kids bleeds into youth, and youth bleeds into, it all just connects. And so to me, that's a massive thing that I'm looking at. On top of all the competency, which is important, but if there isn't some kind of connection and understanding, man, it's going to be really hard. Yeah.
What about you, Pastor?
As you asked it, I thought about what should I be looking for,
right,
which is what he said, and then what I'm actually looking for. So what I should be looking for, to add on to him, is I should be looking for, first and foremost, passion for God. And then second, someone that just got some hustle, some work ethic. And y'all are great leaders. You're not like me, so you've never experienced this. When you need a bass player, can you spell Jesus? It's just that bass guy get played on Sunday. It'd be nice if you love Jesus, but if you don't, we can work on it. And so if I were to be honest, there has been times, volunteer or staff, where I've hired somebody based on competency. They can do the job has to get done. And it's always bitten me in the end. So for me, I'm working on disciplining myself, passion for God, and someone who has a passion for what we're doing, and then competency third. But you need people that can do the job, and if they love Jesus and they work hard and they can't do the job, that ain't helping.
Yeah, I love that. There's this concept in organizational psychology. It talks about person job fit versus person organization fit. And I think in the kind of the line of work that we're in, maybe if you're in the ministry space too, sometimes we got to focus a little bit more on person organization fit, person culture fit than person job fit, because we've all been pressed into those moments where we do need that competency, we need that skill set, and we're like, all right, if you could spell Jesus, yes, I'll give you the role, and then I'll overlook some of we'll figure out the rest. We're going to put you through the growth track, our discipleship process, and it's part of your onboarding, and you're going to love it. It's going to be great. Exactly, but we do have to focus on that because of the nature of the work that we do, but also we have to focus on the person job fit. You know, something we say at VOUS is that we want to get people on the bus. We want to get the right people on the bus. And then after they're on the bus, we want to put them in the right seat on the bus. So a lot of times when you're building teams, when you're thinking through organizational development, you're not just trying to fill that specific need. You're thinking with a future in mind. I got to get the right man, the right woman around this team that can buy into the vision, buy into the culture. And that's not just applicable in the ministry space. That's in all the spaces. You've got an organizational culture. You've got a vision attached to what it is that you're doing. You need somebody that's going to come alongside that. And then when they're alongside that, figure out, what they're good at and put them in the right place. And yes, sir. Yeah, go for it.
I would just say too, what I've been told, and I think it bears true now we're only 5 years old, but the stronger your culture is, it's harder to get someone in, and the more that becomes important. Because if they don't have it and they don't carry your values, and it really shows. And then it's like, oh, they're weird. It's like just doesn't fit. They're doing their job, it doesn't fit. So our hiring process has changed too, to be way more about like, do you like what we like and care about what we care about? And do you understand why you are attracted to Sundays? Do you understand all the work that goes into that? Yeah. So you think of like a VOUS and you go, oh my God, this is the greatest culture I've ever seen. Yeah, and it's so carefully designed that it would actually frustrate a lot of us. But you have to say yes to that. And so I find it harder now to hire than ever. I have more money than ever, and I have more opportunity than ever, and yet it's more challenging than ever to bring someone into the team.
You have thoughts on that?
I think there is a God factor to team building. That it sounds very non-pastoral for me to say that I don't like. Because I just want to rush it, get the person, put them in, and there is absolutely a divine connection of God's just called us to do ministry together. He's called us to build this thing together. And the enemy will always send a counterfeit before God sends the right fit. And when the enemy sends a counterfeit, the right fit is nowhere to be seen. So to pass on the temptation of, I know you're not our culture. I know you don't fit. I know I'm going to regret this down the road, but I don't see any other options. And we're in a culture where we bring in business practices and leadership practices and all that kind of stuff to the kingdom of God, which I'm 100% for. But you can't do this without faith. And you can't do this without, He is Jehovah Jireh. He doesn't just provide money. He provides every leader that I need to fulfill the vision that He's called me to fulfill. And I'm going to exercise my faith that God's going to send the right people. And I'm going to be disciplined enough and faith-filled enough to wait for the right person. It's not expedient, but it will always pay off in the end.
Come on, that's very good. That's very good. I think in a lot of ways, the way that God reveals to us the right person to bring on is, I think it was Pastor Mike Todd, he said, burden yourself with what burdens your leader. One time he said that, and that really struck a chord in me. But even when I think about building organizationally, thinking about the things that are burdening me as an organizational leader in the role that I'm in, things that are tasking for me, things that are weighing on me, who in the spectrum of my world is solving for the thing that burdens me? Who's accomplishing something that has proven to be difficult for us as an organization? Who's leaning into spaces that we have often maybe run into walls, and that's been a weakness for us? And I think in a lot of ways that's God highlighting this might be the right individual, this might be the right man, the right woman for you to bring onto your team. I think another practical question for both of you would be, outside of what do you look for in an individual, how do you know that you have a need? Like when do you know that, okay, I need to make a hire? There's this temptation between like, I desire a hire or I actually need a hire. What's your philosophy? What's your process in determining that?
For us at Uni, and sometimes it's hard to kind of put your finger on it, but when you realize I'm either losing people or not able to properly steward the people that I have because of this gap in our role. For example, sometimes you may have a volunteer that's in an area. And so I've got a person there, they're just not a full-time employee. How do I know when that volunteer becomes full-time? When they're giving me 15, 20 hours a week, they're committed, and it's still not enough time to be able to properly steward that area of ministry. When you realize, hey, I'm losing what God's entrusted me with because I don't have, someone over that area, then it's like, I got to pull the trigger. No.
Yeah. I would just maybe yes to all of that, and then maybe for some of you that are going, man, we're not even there yet. We're still on like volunteer levels. I would say, like, how do you know when to add another volunteer? How do you know how to add more? And the answer to that is always. Like always. Do we need another audio engineer? Yes. Do we need another drummer? Yes. Do we need another kids worker? Yes. So that never stops. That doesn't stop on our level. It wouldn't stop at VOUS level. It wouldn't stop at Union's level. It wouldn't stop at Elevation's level, whoever it might be. That never stops. So constantly, the workers are few. That's the theology of harvest. The workers are few, but the harvest is plentiful. So we always need more and more people in the harvest field. And then with staff, what I've noticed is there's usually a faith step for you that need to hire more staff. There's usually a faith step of, okay, I'm going to bring them on, and it might not make perfect sense yet financially, or they might not have a totally full plate right away, but we're going to stay the same if we stay here. So I have to bring them on and almost kind of fill the gap. And I've noticed that happens for us sometimes where it's like, all right, we have that's a hired position now, but it's almost not full-time, or maybe not even part-time, but we know we need someone there. And so then we allow the position to grow, because we know the moment you properly have it there, and you have the right person, it will grow. And I was thinking about, in Genesis 2:5, it said that there was land, but there was no plants because there was no one to work it. And so sometimes you have an opportunity and you're going, why isn't it bearing fruit? Well, there's no one there to work it. So sometimes by faith you have to, not being foolish, but by faith you have to okay, we're going to put someone in that role. And then once Adam is there, or Eve or whatever, then the plants can start to grow in that area. Yeah,
that's very good. That's very good. I think part of the challenge sometimes as organizational leaders, even when speaking about volunteers, when identifying the next person to bring on your team, is you want to do it, but the workers aren't there, and so sometimes the workers aren't there because you haven't systemized a way to create a pipeline of leaders, create a pipeline of who's coming behind. What are some systems, some practices that you guys have within your churches that help you develop a pipeline for the workers that you need?
It was a lot easier when we started than it is now. I remember from day one, I led a connect group, and it was closed. It wasn't posted online. I would go find who I thought the most capable people were, and we were in the house, and it was just, they were constantly around me. Yeah. Now, we have a college pipeline, we have, our volunteer pipeline and all that, but I've learned as the top leader for whatever department you're in, kids, student, worship, or whatever it may be, you should always have 8 to 12 people in your house. Great. There's just something about being in the house, breaking bread, that it accelerates impartation. And I'm all for the colleges, all for the internships, all for all that other good stuff. But for that top level leader that you're trying to find for your team, they've got to do, like what Jesus said, come see where I lay my head. They've got to do, and we've just got to get in a space where it doesn't matter how structured this thing becomes, breaking bread and doing life together. I know that's VOUS culture. It's like this will always be a part of our DNA.
Yeah, I mean, more is caught than taught, right? There's in relationships, there's some relationships where you have proximity, and where because of the proximity and we're doing life, what I'm doing is being reflected on you, and what you're doing is being reflected on me. But then also in relationships, sometimes there's not proximity, so you do got to level up your intensity a little bit. When you level up your intensity, that's you being intentional about duplicating who you are or the culture or what you carry in the other person. But you were going to say something?
And another thing.
Yeah.
I found all the best leaders that are passionate in love with God and perfect employees are employed at other churches. God will never send through your door the perfect leader. He will always send the raw material that you've got to pastor and develop and sometimes deliver and all the times rebuke. And you've got to develop. You think about David's 300. The Bible said they had bad credit, bad reputation, like they were some bums, and then they turn into the greatest warriors of all. So you've just got to get in your mind that I've got to look for that raw material, and then I've got to be willing to develop Christ and that gifting, that ability in them. I'm going to have to pastor up the best team, which requires them to, because people will not allow you to pastor them unless they trust you. And as long as I keep you at arm's length, you will never trust me. So at some point, I got to pull you close. I'm done.
I think... Well, I was going to say, I want to jump off of that for a moment, because I think so much of building team is building relational equity, and it is building trust. But sometimes the temptation as the leader is to have a little bit of a distance. So how do you manage the tension between I need to keep a distance for appropriate reasons, for right reasons, but also I need to build some relational equity so that I can speak into your life and my words actually hold weight in your life?
Yeah, like a phrase we use a lot is dream big, start small. So everything is small, and so I feel like the bigger that circle becomes around you, the more distortion can start to happen. I think Craig Rochelle says that, right? The bigger the organization gets, or the smaller it is, the more simple it is. But the bigger it is, the more complex it gets. So I think you've got to have a small group of people around you that you are pouring your life into, and then the expectation is that they have a small group of people around them that they're pouring their life into. So I think that is super important. And I also think, like with relationship, I think what I've learned, at least in this season, is that if people feel like they have access to me, and they do, and they feel that, that's all they want. And a lot of times they won't even put a demand on it completely, but they feel a bond because they know it's available. They can make the call, they can send the text, they can set up the meeting. And in a lot of, like at my stage now, it's like most of them would be like, oh, I'm not going to bother Jabin with that, but they would know that the door is open, and then I create spaces and places. So like every Tuesday morning, I have breakfast with my core team, and there's got to be things like, and there's other things, but that's just like a religious planned, every Tuesday morning it's going to happen. And there's other things, but I think, we're shepherds. We're not CEOs. We're shepherds, and so you got to smell like a sheep. Yeah, you got to get around people. And
another thing. I'm going to get in trouble for this one. I got a reputation of being a savage, and it's a wrong reputation. It's true. I've learned, and you do what you want, it's not Bible. I require a certain level of health to get close to me. Because listen, you hear us talk about the church's hospitals where people are getting whole and healthy and all that, but hurt people hurt people. And the pace at which I run, if somebody in my inner circle is wounded, it's not healthy for them to run at that pace. But just because it's not healthy for them to run at that pace because they're wounded, it doesn't mean it's not a healthy pace. And a lot of times, man, we're just moving too fast. Man, I don't have time to care for people. No, this pace is too fast for your level of unhealth. And it's going to cause offense, and it's going to cause greater unhealth. So you would actually be better served being in an area of the church and connected to a leader who can develop you that's not moving this fast. And as you get healthier, your proximity can get closer.
Yeah, that's great. I think so much of the dance of leadership is being clear on what it is that we need as leaders and what it is that we're trying to build, and being clear about who fits into that, who doesn't fit into that. And when they don't fit into that, doesn't mean that they don't fit within your organization. It just means that maybe they don't fit into that specific compartment of your organization. But that brings up, I think, a lot of questions that I get from pastors or leaders is, if I do have to shift somebody within my organization, or if I do have to even let somebody go, how do I do that? You know, how do I tell this person that they're not a good fit over here, but I want to put them over here, or actually, we don't think that you're a good alignment to our organization in general?
I think we've got to discipline ourselves to make it a case-by-case basis, because every heart is not the same and every situation is not the same. The most painful transitions are the one when the individual loves God, they love you, and they just can't do the job. That'll rip your heart out. I mean, when you know this person will jump in front of a train for you, and the organization has just outgrown them, it's just like, ugh. And I've done all transitions wrong, so I can tell you what not to do. One big key is, just because this is not the seat for you on the bus doesn't mean there's not a seat for, there is a seat for everybody who has the right heart on this bus. And in the past, because of speed and because of not valuing people the way that I should, it's like, well, because you don't fit here, go talk to so-and-so and they'll find a place for you to fit. And I keep moving, so-and-so dropped the ball. And now this person is kind of just lost in no man's land. So we've got to make sure, hey, you can't do this, but this is what you can do. And as a part of this family, we're going to steward your soul well and make sure you find a place of significance. Now, if they got a bad heart, Paul said, turn them over to Satan. And so
what does that look like? How do you do that?
No, I'm good at that.
I have stories.
No, and that is just, I'm unpastorable. I'm prideful. I have unrepentant sin in my life, whatever else it may be. And then, it sounds harsh, turn them over to Satan, but it really is, no, we will not allow a heart that is turned away from the Bible and from God in this house. I heard Bishop Joseph Walker preach the best message on how to fire somebody in my life. He preached Jonah. And he said, we don't want to release people because we feel like we're rejecting them. Not understanding that God has prepared a whale that is designed to bring them to a place of brokenness so that he can restore them. And sometimes releasing people will bring them to the place of brokenness that God needs them to be at so he can build them back up. And some of us are protecting people from the grace of God by holding on to them.
That's very good. Come on.
So we're 5 years old. The first 3 people that I fired, when I fired them, I thought they were going to be relieved and happy and like, this is not for me. And every one of them, like, tears in their eyes, mouth drops. And they were like, oh, like they were crushed. And then I was like, oh, wait, I thought you didn't like me. I thought you didn't like this. So it made me realize, okay, that I'm an Enneagram 8. Sorry if you think it's demonic. And so I'm a challenger, and I'm like, they hate me, and so I'm going to build a wall, and then I'm going to run over them. And so through the wall and over them. So but I realized obviously none of that's healthy, right? So sometimes
depends on the season you're in.
Yeah. Steven's like, that's great, man. I like that idea. A wall and then a car and then a truck. So, and then bury them. So what I've learned is, we do verbal warnings, and then we'll do written warnings, and then we'll do physical work. No, and then we'll put them on probations. So if someone was to get let go in our organization right now, it would be a minimum of a 90-day process. They would not be surprised. And it would be, again, obviously if it was just something crazy out of the blue, but I'm just saying if it's like work related, you just do not want to work and you are refusing the system, there would be so much pastoral input and growth and management before we would finally get to the point of like, okay, I don't think this is working. So, and the cool thing is anybody we have let go, they've all stayed in our church because we were able to do it in a healthy way. That was like, man, I just don't think this is, this just isn't a fit. Like it just isn't. And so,
Started a church.
We're going to pray for Pastor
yeah.
Stephen right after this.
So yeah. But so we always create, and even with volunteers, like we would never just cut somebody. We would, hey, you're always late. Your attitude is always, how can we help you? What can we, and we try to give them examples and ways to correct, before we.
That's so good. I mean, I think a big thing that we hinge on, and again, this isn't just for you in ministry, whatever space you're in, if you're a leader in any space, you can't manage what you don't measure. So you need to have mechanisms within your organizational context, within your work context, that is managing or measuring what it is that you're trying to manage, whether the individual or the project. We also say you got to inspect what you expect. So if we're not taking intentional time of even VOUSCon, looking at this, I'm having a good time, but the whole time that I'm here, I'm inspecting this entire process because I've already got 2024 in mind. And I'm also in that, not just evaluating the effectiveness of the experience, I'm evaluating the effectiveness of the team that I oversee so that I could have these conversations moving forward so that we could pastor, we could shepherd, we can develop. Maybe we'll change gears a little bit and stop talking about running people over, but go into building people up. So we're talking about team. When you've got them on team, you've got to steward them now. You've got to call out what you see inside of them, pull out what God has put inside of them. What are things that you do within your church spaces that you are intentional about developing your team?
So we've got like a little kind of, we call it pastoral wheel. So I'll run through it really quickly. Step 1 is build a relationship. Step 2 is the biggest step ever, and that's to paint a picture of what their life could look like. I think one of the biggest issues with us developing leaders is we let them know what they can do for us, but we don't let them know what this will do for them. Hey, if you are faithful at this church, here's what your life will look like. Is this what you want? And then I've taught my leaders, wait till they buy in to that personal vision. Because the next step is to identify the it. What's that character issue that's going to keep you from your next level? And dealing with that, it's going to be painful. So if you don't want the vision of what we've painted, you're never going to go through the pain. Shape their life. That's Paul saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Hey, here's how we do culture. We do it this way here. And then the big deal is release them. Give them a shot. Like, don't wait for them to have it completely down packed before you. Give them a shot. And then the final step is push them. And this is big. A lot of leaders, after doing something for 12 months, 18 months, 20, they've got it down packed. They can do it with their eyes closed. And a leader who's not challenged is not growing. Yep. So the second we have a leader that is doing stuff through muscle memory, they no longer have to pray. They no longer have to learn. They no longer have to stretch. They're not in their best creative space. So we're constantly looking to push people into places where they're not the most comfortable. Gifted, yes, but not comfortable. Right. So you still got to pray. You still got to learn. You need some sleepless nights to keep you sharp. You need to sweat some nights out. Like, I don't know how this is going to go, because it develops you as a leader.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I also think the the side of leadership for every one of you, whether you're running a ministry of volunteers or you're a senior pastor or anywhere in between, that it's so taxing on our end, and you'll feel this, like, man, I just got to keep saying it. I just got to keep repeating it. I just got to keep, because the organization is never leaning towards health, ever. It's never going that way. It's always trying to go off the road. It's just always, and it's either your ministry is either going to be by default or design. And so we're constantly designing and shaping and painting and working and creating that culture that we want. So I think it is hard to stay a builder, an encourager, a lifter, a visioneer, a vision caster. It is hard to do that. So every one of you has to resist that. And, we're joking about being eights and running people over, but it's honestly, it's something I have to fight, because there is a natural defense in me and a challenge in me that I do have to resist, and constantly just try to teach with a smile and build relationship with a smile. And you're going to have to do that in your ministry. You're going to have to do that whether you're running a parking lot team or a kids team or an executive team or running a church. It doesn't matter. The why. I feel like the better I can communicate the why of what we're doing, the healthier the team seems to be, and the more energized the team seems to be. And because the what is coming and the who is coming and all the work is coming, but it's that motivational piece that keeps it high. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. And I love what you're saying about referring back to the why. In any organizational setting, in any leadership context, there have to be these anchoring points that we default back to. At VOUS, we would say that our anchoring points are our values, our staff values. So we've got these 7 staff values that really frame up in totality how it is that we are developing our staff. Your pastoral framework. It's a framework for us of how we are trying to bring our staff along on the journey. So you as leaders, you got to have this framework that you're trying to run, this funnel, this practice methodology that you're trying to run everybody through, so that you can, at the end of the day, say, even if it wasn't a good fit, we've done our job as an organization to try and develop these individuals. And then on the opposite side, you're saying, you know what, I can actually say that we've got a successful team, we've got a thriving team, because we've seen these individuals go through this process and we've seen the fruit of this process. Maybe quickly we'll talk about that. I think sometimes in church, momentum can be a liar, right? Yeah. So, and we'll think that we're succeeding as a team or we're doing good because there's momentum, but really, for you, what are the telltale signs that you are actually building a unified team? What are indicators for you that, I feel good about where we're at, versus maybe I'd love even some practical indicators of like, I don't feel good about where we're at?
Yeah, there's probably a lot. The first one that comes to my mind, 2 things. One, do I see my leaders in places they don't have to be? You don't have to be at Saturday prayer, but are you there? You don't have to be at this event. Like, for example, we have a women's night. Where are my male staff? If they're home happy not to have to come to church that night, I'm like, ugh. If they're huddled in the back room watching on the production, I just want to be in the room. I know, man, we're in a healthy place. So I'm looking for, and then that, you kind of hear it every leadership talk, have to versus get to. Is there a we get to do this spirit, or is this, do we really have to? And entitlement is just something that creeps in to every organization. And it's just a matter of, like you were saying, it never leaks to healthy. It always leaks to unhealthy. So it's just constantly first examining my heart. Because, sometimes you get up to preach and be like, ugh, I have to do this. As opposed to, man, it's a privilege. It's an honor. And constantly just in our culture, remind, hey, not everybody gets used by God. There's not a move of God everywhere. So let's not devalue this by talking negatively about it or acting like it's just going to happen forever.
Yeah, and I would say what I don't judge it by is necessarily Sunday, because for me, and part of that might be my gift and our worship team's gift, but like Sundays are going to be good. So what I can't do, and this will happen a lot because my wife is in the weeds and she runs the church, and I'm praying and prophesying and preaching and speaking in tongues. So we'll drive separate cars to church. We'll drive separate cars back to the house, and we'll sit down for lunch. And I'm going, this is a revival.
Yeah, this is great.
This is a move of God. This is 2023 Azusa Street, and she's just ticked. She's just ticked. And I'm going, what happened? Well, this. So it can't just be the Sunday. Now, if your Sundays are bad in the sense, well then, yeah. But that's kind of the last thing you'll see it, because that momentum will carry you through. So it's all of that grind in the weekday that I think you're looking for. From buying to communication to body language to you're constantly inspecting that and fighting for that. Usually Sunday's the last frontier, because it's Sunday and the music kicks on, everyone gets in the spirit, and you preach your staff through again, another week. So it's kind of like you don't see it, but man, there's all this undercurrent. And so what I don't do now, what I used to do, and like before COVID, we were 2 years old. We were 2 years old running 1,100 people, and we went into COVID, and I went, oh, we're gonna crush this season because we're so strong. We weren't strong. We were just big. We were a big klutz 11-year-old that had a growth spurt. You know what I'm saying? But that, like, we weren't mature, and we didn't have culture. We had momentum. I thought we had culture. We had momentum. And we were the new thing in town, and I was a good preacher. And so COVID revealed every one of my weaknesses and our organization's weaknesses. And so then I had to go, oh, okay, I've been a preacher. I need to become a leader. And our church has momentum, but it doesn't have culture. So now here we are 3 years later. We're 5 years old now. And now I actually feel like, oh, we have actual culture and leadership. And thankfully, I think we have some momentum, and I'm grateful for that. But that's overrated now,
That's very good. I want to stay in that lane of I'm not just a preacher, but I'm a leader. Because I think a lot of us that are in the ministry space, we didn't get in the ministry space to build offices. But you got to build an office to build a church sometimes. You got to build a team in order to lead others towards Christ. So, I mean, even for you as leaders, what have you done personally to develop yourself as a leader so that you could put on that managerial hat, put on that organizational development hat, put on that leader hat?
Get around great leaders. I mean, sitting at the feet, between books and podcasts and YouTube and all that, I mean, you can get a coffee with any great leader out there just by opening up your phone or your computer. So I think that's a big factor to it. Stop reinventing the wheel. I don't know what it is about American church culture, but people want to be unique more than they want to be effective. And they want to be the only church that does this. And I'm like, how about you just find a place where it works, make it your culture, and run with it? Because the goal is to transform lives. The goal is not to say we're the only church that has ever done this. And, there's no brownie points for uniqueness. So that's very good.
Yeah, and you do have to commit to, because it's so different. My Sunday morning sermon and my Tuesday morning staff meeting are so radically different, right? And I like Sunday, and that's all I want to do. All I want to do is Sunday. I don't want to do Tuesday. Now, and to be fair, I actually like it a lot more now, but it's not what I literally thought, let me preach and pray, and y'all are going to do everything else. And it just doesn't work that way. Right. You do have to preach, and you do have to pray, and you do have to study, but then you also have to run an organization. People are trusting you with the finances. And you have to steward those well, and you steward those well through how you lead the organization. And so I think you do have to commit to that. I think it's a discipline that becomes a delight over time, because you do start getting excited, because you start eventually seeing the fruit. I think in preaching or Sunday, you can see the fruit faster, right? You see the person crying. You see the hands raised for salvation. You see the person healed. You're preaching and somebody stands up and gives a standing ovation. You see it, but that can become a drug to you. But the building of the ministry, Paul called that a weight. He said it's a weight of the ministry. So that's the thing that you have to commit to, that is more challenging, but then the fruit That's how you last. Because there are a lot of very small churches all throughout America with incredible preachers, and you will never know their name, and they're phenomenal, and they have a phenomenal song leader and a phenomenal piano player that they're paying $500 a week, and they're killing all over, and they're in Vegas. I guarantee there's 10 guys that can preach me under this rug, but they've got 100 people, right? So, because they never committed to the other side of building. And so that's, and they're all over America, you know, and there's white dudes that can preach, black dudes that can preach, Hispanic dudes. It's not just, it's all, there are great, preachers, but they never committed to the building,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. I mean, so much of us accepting what God has placed on our life as church builders, as storytellers of this great story, is us stepping into that role of leadership. Leadership is not a mantle. It's not a soapbox that I step on top of. It's not a title. It is a mindset. It is something that I clothe myself with, that I have fully stepped into, knowing that I've been anointed by God to be a leader. And because I have been anointed in that way, I have the capacity to do what it is that he's asking me to do. So I would just encourage you, wherever you find yourself, whatever space you're in, whatever season you're in within your organizational context, you are the right leader. You're the right man. You're the right woman. You've got a team underneath you. And if you don't yet, you will have a team underneath you that'll help champion what it is that God has put on your heart so that you can move forward in the purpose that he's identified for you. So come on, can you help me thank our panelists? We love you guys.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you'd like to discover more content like this, check out the VOUS Friends and Family Network, created to equip you with free resources and real relationships. And don't miss the opportunity to be in the room next year at VOUSCon 2024, a gathering of global leaders designed to strengthen your faith and connect you to community.